This conference will now be
5:15.
recorded.
We are at 5:15 in Sefaria, in Shar, the gateway of Yichud Hamasa, of devotion, of focusing our actions, chapter 5 and paragraph 15 in Sefaria of duties of the heart. And he's been discussing how focusing ourselves to do things truly for Hashem is quite a challenge, because we are all so influenced and affected by people around us and what people will think and what they will say. So typically our actions are a glob of many different thoughts and motives and factors that goes into it, right? That speaks to the concept of judging Dan lekaf zchut, right? Which is often somewhat loosely and therefore mistranslated as giving the benefit of the doubt. The problem with that translation, as we've said before, is we're taught that you should dan others lekaf zchut, and that way God will dan you lekaf zchut. So it can't mean you should give others the benefit of the doubt, and that way God will give you the benefit of the doubt, because God has no doubts. But actually, the proper definition of dan, judge, lekaf, towards the side of zchut, of merit, means that we should view another person's actions in a meritorious manner, recognizing that there are many different drives that resulted in this action, but to attribute it to the positive aspects and not to the negative aspects. Right? And by doing that, the great mirror in the sky will reflect our actions, and will reflect that, and the way the heavens, God, the heavenly court, will view our actions will also be by focusing on the positive aspects of that which we do. But that's what this chapter is about, and it's about trying to keep that focus when we do things. Okay, and he spoke about the Yetzer Hara, which we've described as the great personal trainer that's there to push us and push us and push us, and then ultimately to give in. The problem that we often run into is we give in before it does, and then we get ourselves into some deep doo-doo sometimes. We get ourselves into trouble. So, but that is its job, is to challenge and push us. And it puts doubts into our minds. It presents us with hashkafic, meaning hashkafa is our outlook on life, and it presents us with some hashkafic difficulties, challenges. Let's hear. Utchilat mashi yisafek otcha, the first doubt that the Yetzer tries to give to us, v'yishtadel levarer oto etzlechahu, and he tries to, based on false claims and indications, tries to present this as fact. Shenafshecha ein la kiyum mibilti haguf. The soul does not exist beyond the body, meaning the soul is simply the living spirit that we're alive. Animals have a living spirit, plants have a living spirit, human beings have a living spirit. And the same way that when an animal dies, no offense to the movie All Good Dogs Go to Heaven, right? But we don't believe that dogs go to heaven. We don't believe that they have this separate entity of a neshama, of a soul that will exist forever, but rather they have a living spirit, and once the body dies, that living spirit dies along with it. So those that say that human beings are exactly the same thing, we are just creatures on this earth, and we have evolved to be the ones who are in charge of running, or others would say destroying this earth, however you want to look at it. But we're simply, brainy animals, and when we die, that's it. It's all over. Shenafshecha, that your soul, your spirit, ein lakiyam ibiltei aguf. It has no continuity. It has no permanence besides the guf. Fishihi nifsedet behefsed gufcha. When the body dies, the person, the complete person, dies, and there is nothing more afterwards. V'she'ein la mitziut achar hamavet b'dimyonot. And it's not that the feelings, that the person, that the mind, or not really the mind, but all the experiences, right? The way our belief is that the neshama is you. The neshama is you, not your physical you, but your emotional, psychological you, with all of your feelings and all of your experiences and all of your memories and all of that. And that when it comes to the human being, not like the animals, there the pasuk says vayitzer with two yud, and God formed, there was a double forming. There's the physical being and the spiritual being that become these strange bed partners for as long as the person is physically alive. And once the person physically dies, then that part of that person that lifts off the person. We mentioned many times Life After Life by Dr. Moody, where he collects all of these different similar experiences, the near-death experiences that people have, and they feel themselves lifting off their body, and they experience who came in and who said what and who did what, and they recall all these things when they were clinically dead, and then when they are revived, they're able to tell who came into the room, what did they say. All of these experiences, that is very much a very important part of our belief. And that's why we always say that when one is by the bedside of a person who is really, really at their end, even though they might be comatose and for all intents and purposes, according to our measuring instruments, the person doesn't hear anything, doesn't know anything, nothing registers. But on the contrary, we say that at that point, the neshama is hovering right there, in, out, in, out, in, out, and is very, very acutely aware of all that which is going on there. And therefore, if we're going to be speaking about the burial, speaking about this, it's best to walk outside and have those conversations and not have it in front of the person. But the first Yetzer Hara proposal or view on life is that Ein Lo Mitziyah, there is no existence achar mavet, after death. She'eina mitkaimim k'shiyidbonein behem ha'adam. Right? When one looks into these claims, then one recognizes that there is no validity to these claims. And we have people who have experiences here that can share that with us. And we certainly have the Torah, right? One of the things that we'll go into, I saw a fascinating Ramban. Pardon me just one second. Someone's trying to get in. Sorry. Hello, can I help you? Hello, can I help you? Ah, okay. It's in my office. Sure. We caught a live one. Someone's coming in person. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I was starting to say that I saw a fascinating Ramban that I'll share. Kathy, you'll hear it again tomorrow morning. I apologize. In the Parsha class. But in the Parsha, we speak about kares. Kares is a spiritual cutting off of a person's soul, right? By doing certain very serious transgressions. See, he writes there, fascinatingly, that The Torah doesn't, he said, right there we see about the eternity that a person has. Meaning, the Torah doesn't speak directly about a person's eternity, because the Torah spoke about God blowing into, at the very beginning of Bereshit, of Genesis, God blowing into humankind this soul, this living soul, which is a chelek Eloka mimal, which is a part of God, so to speak, from above. So God is eternal, so that soul is eternal. Come in, Natalie.
Oh, thank you.
A different Natalie, not my wife. Hi. We're mostly online. Come have a seat.
Sorry, I did not know.
It's perfect. I like having some people in person. It's good. Okay. Yeah, you just have to just listen. I don't have the copy in front of me now.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna write it down.
Okay. So the Torah. So he said the Torah is not going to speak about the eternity of the soul. Of course, a soul is eternal. If the soul is from the heavenly realm, from the godly realm, which is eternal, so of course that is eternal, right? That's natural. What is unnatural that the Torah needs to tell us? What's unnatural is that certain severe transgressions can cause that soul to be cut off from its source of life. Oh, that the Torah needs to tell us about. That's already an abnormality. That's already something that we would not expect. So this idea of the eternity of the soul, we have psukim, many verses, when it talks about someone dying, it says first that they're gathered to his people or her people, and then it speaks about the burial. So what does that mean, right? One might want to say, oh, what does it mean to be gathered to their people? Oh, what that means is they'll be gathered, they'll be buried amongst their family members. That's being gathered to their people. But the order then would be burial, and then v'yasef elamav. It will first be burial, and then being gathered to their people. But that's not the order that the pasuk always has. It first has them being gathered to their people, and then it speaks about the burial. So the gathered to their people is that when a person dies, that the neshama, the soul, is met by those dear ones who have preceded the person to that realm of existence. Right? That's why in Judaism we call death, we call it a gesher hachayim, a bridge of life. And that's the connecting our physical life to our spiritual life. And even more than that, Rabbi Sachs points out so beautifully, I've said this a number of times, the Hebrew word for life is chayim, right? L'chaim, we say, to life, l'chaim. Chayim is life. Well, we know in the Hebrew language, when you have a yud mem at the end of a word, what does that do? That turns it into a plural. Right? People used to wear, now we are Jewish, people wear Jewish stars. People used to wear, when I was a teenager, I had a chai necklace that people would wear. Chai is life, right?
I got one.
You have one, good, right? So chayim is life. So life is in the plural. Why is the Jewish word for life in the plural? Because our understanding of life has this plurality, has this duality, has this rabim. There's the physical life and there is the spiritual life. Okay? So therefore, the first of the persuasions, of the false persuasions of the Yetzer Hara, of the evil inclination, is to get a person to believe that there is no afterlife. That when a person dies, that's the point when it's curtains, when it's all over. Why? Why? Kedei shetia siva levakashat hanaot hakalot vatavot haovdot. Because if that's the case, then there is no final accounting, right? Whoever dies with the most toys wins, right? And that way, there'll be no reason Well, this would be a reason to seek out the most pleasures and the most of our desires, even of these things which have no permanence and no real meaning to them. Shetomar, and that a person should act as the pasuk says, Al Anshe Hadayat Hazot. Yeshayahu, the Navi Isaiah, speaks about those who live life according to this, and it's actually a famous expression. Achol v'shato ki machar namut. Let us eat, let us drink, for tomorrow we shall die. Right? That is a whole view on life, and that is certainly that of the Yetzer Hara. And I would just add that when a person is running after such desires, so those are all counterfeit desires, and they don't give a person the fulfillment that a person is truly seeking. But when a person is leading a meaningful life, that is when the person really is feeling fulfilled, and that is when a person is really having their desires filled, so to speak. And if a person will seek counsel with one's mind, the seichel is, we'll call that the Yetzer Tov, then yarchik mincha de'azot, then this false view of the world one will distance oneself from that with rayo berurot, with very clear indications, asher zachrot hanakadmonim, that was mentioned by our earlier teachers, and the words of the Nevi'im, of the prophets alayhim hashalom. It's interesting, though, that we recognize just how difficult this belief could be, and that's why when it comes to things which impart tuma, impart spiritual impurity, a mate, a corpse, a dead human body is called Avi Avot Hatuma, the father of impurity. Meaning, if something is an Av Hatuma, so then if it's the primary, then it can cause a Rishon. Well, that's not called. If one is the source, then it can cause Tuma to a primary, to a first level, then to a secondary, and sometimes to a third level. Right? A mate has the ability to cause something else to be an Av Hatuma, a source, right? Because when we see a dead body in front of us, for all appearances, that's it. It's all over, right? We don't see the soul lifting off. We don't see that which comes afterwards. At times, it's fascinating. I was called to do a funeral of a family, not members of the shul, but they had a religious, I forget what it was, nephew, whoever what it was. So they wanted to have a proper Orthodox funeral. So they called me in, and this person was saying that after this, I believe it was his uncle, after this uncle of his passed away, and he passed away. I mean, he was really at his end, and he had difficulty breathing, and his body had really shut down on him, right? In many ways, even before the point of death, and that when he was there in the room alone with the body, waiting for the Chevra Kadisha, waiting for the mortuary service to come take the body, he said he saw a vision of this uncle of his, healthy, breathing, smiling, and thanking him for taking care of everything. Now, do we can we say, and might this very well have been just his imaginings? he'd been sleep deprived over the past 2 days, and this is what he was imagining. Definitely possibility. Definitely possibility. But at the same time, that's what we believe. We believe that the soul lifts off the body, and the soul is a carbon copy of who we are, just in an ethereal, spiritual state. But because death does present such a quandary for us, and it does give a sense that there is this finality, right? That is why it is of the strictest level of tuma, of impurity, and and that is the first of the claims that the Yetzer Hara, that the inclination, our evil inclination, will make to try to a false idea that will try to convince us. Next, the kasher yityaesh misafek otcha bezeh. Once he will give up trying to put doubts about this into your mind, then another doubt that it tries to give people is about the Creator. To say to you, Ki ha'olam hazeh eino chadash. This world is not new. Velo nivra. It was not created. Velo sar kasher hu ata. Velo yasur kain. It is as it always was, and it will be as it, and always will be as it is. And when I was in high school, right, I remember vividly my science teacher. I was in yeshiva in New York, Chavetz Chaim High School Yeshiva, and the science teacher said, "All right, guys, listen. All right, I don't know what your rabbis teach you in the morning. That's not my deal. I'm here to teach you science." And he taught us what was science accepted at that time, which was the constant state theory, that the world always existed in its present state. It always was. So there never was a beginning. And Rambam, in his guide to the Moreh Nevuchim, to the guide to the perplexed, right? See, he brings from Aristotle that this world always existed. And the Rambam, Maimonides, says that based on his understanding of science, that is incorrect, besides the fact that the Torah speaks about Bereshit. But there he says something fascinating. He says, if science would prove beyond a doubt that the world always existed, that would not shake our faith. And the same way he says that when the Torah speaks about God extending his arm, or the finger of God, or the eyes of God, or the ears of God, we don't take that literally, right? We view that as being anthropomorphism, and it's a way of speaking to make it more easily understood to us. And the Torah is speaking allegorically. So too, we would look at the first psukim of the Torah, which speaks about Bereshit in the beginning, and understand that that also is speaking allegorically. But he says that's not true. He says from a science point of view, this is Rambam going back to the 12th century, 11th century. From a science point of view, that's not true. And science, he proves scientifically that the world had a beginning. And we certainly now know that according to the best science of today, we have an ever-expanding world, and there was a point when that all began, and that is what science calls the Big Bang, right? So, as someone wrote very pithily, so, science climbed to the heights of their understanding, and when they reached the zenith, they met the creationist right over there, right? When they realized there was a beginning. So what's the first word of the Torah? Bereshit. What's Bereshit? In the beginning, right? So they got to the first word, and now they're working on the next two words, which is bara Elokim, that God created, right? So now they know there was a big bang, but what precipitated that big bang, right? What caused that big bang, or who caused that big bang? But science, like I said, has come around to recognize that this world was not as, it's not a constant state. We're living in an ever expanding universe. Now, if the world always was, so what makes there was no creator, there's no createe. It's just always been here. Ve'ein davar mimenu chayav b'avodat zulato. So there is no one group or one entity that needs to serve a different entity. We're all just here on the earth. We've always been here on the earth, and no one has any inherent supremacy over anyone else. So why should anyone serve anyone else? It's all what's been here, right, forever. The kasher yikucha bazeh, and if this, when it will come at you with these thoughts, shuv l'sichcha, once again, return to your senses. V'yira otcha hefsed hadas hazu, and you'll see how faulty this view is. Mimamar hayichud min hasefer hazeh, that's the first gateway that we didn't learn, which is the gateway of God's unity. Ubamashi mitziacha ki la'olam hazeh borei bara'o milo davar. And of course, you come to the conclusion, as science has, that this world had a beginning, and not just had a beginning, but it had a beginner, one who made that beginning, one who started that beginning. It's interesting. Example, if we were walking along in the Amazon rainforest, a place where no human being had ever set foot, or so being told by our guide, and then we come across something as sophisticated as this, the cover of my 29-cent pen. Something as sophisticated as this, we would immediately say, okay, either someone's been here and dropped their pen cap, or there was a strong wind that blew someone's pen cap over here. Because we would look at something with this technological sophistication and say, there's no way. And I'd say, no, actually, there was some sap from a tree that dripped down, and there was some blue dye from a plant that got mixed onto that sap, and the sap fell onto this twig and formed around it, and then got hardened by the sun, and then the twig decomposed, but at that point this had already hardened, and that's how this came about. And you'd say, Rabbi, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. This is clear proof that this was engineered. This was produced. This did not come around by itself. And then we look at the splendor, the grandeur of this world, of an animal, of a fly, of a human being, of a tree, of a leaf, of a fruit, of a vegetable. And that just came about by itself. No, that's different. Why? Because that's alive. Oh, that doesn't take away from the question. That just adds to the question. How did this become this living being? And how does this living being have the ability to create other human beings? That two half cells come together and fertilize, the sperm fertilizes the egg, And 9 months later, you've got a supercomputer in this being running the entire body, controlling everything, the temperature, the hormones, everything, right? The kid is out to lunch. Wants to put everything in its mouth. That's all the kid knows. But this supercomputer is running this incredible enterprise. So this could not have happened by itself. But you and I mean, I said many times, Devorah already has a master's. When she was taking her first college course, which was Intro to Bio, my daughter Devorah, Intro to Bio, and that was right when she came back from Israel. This is her first college course, and it was COVID, I think, already had started. So yeah, COVID had started. So it was online. So it's an online summer course, Intro to Bio, which is just an incredible amount. It's like I said, it was like learning how to sip water from a fire hydrant, right? That's how you learn how to sip water. Here's a fire hydrant. Good luck. So I took the course along with her, so to speak. I didn't have to pay for the course, and I didn't have to take her tests. I let her do that. But I studied along with her, so I could, help her out along the way. And it was the most incredible experience. It was so eye-opening because the last time I took biology was in 9th grade. I was back in the 1970s. And what science has come up with, recognizing what's going on in the body since then is astounding. It's absolutely astounding. Vida, and know, he says, Ki kol ma shetzivsa otana haTorah be'inyan haShabbos, right? All that the Torah commands us in regard to the laws, the mitzvah of Shabbat, of the Sabbath, is lidchot milibenu. All of that is to push away from our hearts. Dat hakofrim, those who deny chidush haolam, those who deny the fact that the world began. Ulakayim, and it's there to solidify, to establish rayon, this understanding, a hachidush of this world having been created, v'habriya, creation, v'amuna bo b'nafshotenu, and our believing that deep inside of ourselves, ki hi adea nechona, which is of course the truth, right? We always say that in Judaism we do our beliefs. So how do we do our belief in there being a creation of the world? By doing Shabbos. Because God created for 6 days, then he didn't rest on the 7th day. He was not the least bit tired that he felt any need to rest. He did not rest on the 7th day. What did he do? He didn't do malacha, meaning he didn't do creative activities. He ceased to create. And the way that we show our belief in God as a creator who ceased to create on the 7th day is that we spend the 6 days of the week creating, changing this world, altering this world to fit our needs. We get into a car, we press down on the gas, and there's the combustion or the battery, depending what type of car we're driving these days. And that's what propels us a lot faster than the fastest sprinter could ever run, right? Even on our side streets, we go a massive 35 miles an hour, right? A lot faster than any sprinter can ever reach. And we get to where we want to get to, and we fly on planes, and we fly over oceans, right? And we sit at a computer, and we hit some buttons, and we see our dear friends, and we get a chance to study together. That's what we do during the week. We utilize this world, we alter this world, we commandeer using our technology to make this world that much more amenable to us, to serve us. And comes Shabbat, we, like God kept massaging the world further and further each day of creation. And then came Shabbat, where it is as it is. And God ceased to create, ceased to alter this world, and therefore we do our belief in God as a creator by our observance of Shabbat. And that's why, as we always say, it's not simply a day of rest. We're at a day of rest turning on a light switch in no way is exertive. So that shouldn't be a problem. Whereas walking a 1.1 mile to get to shul, 4 legs of that over a 3-day Yom Tov, doing a half marathon of 13.2 miles, right? That's kind of exertive. That's kind of tiring. It'll be a lot more restful to get into my car, lean back, and drive here. But it's not about exertion. It is about altering this world and to serve me. The light switch is a perfect example of me altering this world to serve me. I'm sitting here in an office, no windows, yet it's perfectly lit up over here. Why? Because I can alter this world in order to serve me. People have asked, well, Rabbi, now that we have what's called Alexa or Siri, whatever it is, right? So I can say, Alexa, turn on the lights, and the lights go on, right? Shouldn't that work? Shouldn't that be okay on Shabbos? And of course, it's not okay on Shabbos. Why? That's just a further level of how we could control this world to suit our purposes, right? So this number 2 attack of this Yetzer Hara about the world always existing, that is something that is has been proven by science to be clearly wrong, and our Torah makes it clearly wrong. Even the Rambam said we could have navigated that, but there's no need to navigate that because it's clear to all that there was a beginning point. And one of the basic tenets of Judaism, which is the Shabbat, is all about that belief. Let's see another one. The kasher yityayish misafek einyan hazeh alecha. If he can't convince you about this one, yapilcha b'minei hashituf. Then what will he do? He'll try to cast you into the confusion of shituf. There's not just one God, right? Polytheism, there's a multiplicity of gods. Or, right, kamodat meniche hariboy. There are those that say there are 2 gods. There are those that say it's 3 that are one, a trinity, right? So there are many, many who try to fudge this idea of Hashem Echad, of there being only one God. Vedat anshe toladot, Vedat hapitaim echozei hakochavim, right? Or there are those that say that the universe, right? Right? They don't want to talk about a God. It's the universe, right? It's all godliness. The universe was good to me. The universe, like, what does that mean, right? How does an inanimate universe, right, interact and bring about things? But people who don't want to have to deal with God will speak about the toladot, the universe, right? Or what's his name who does Kathy, help me, the rabbi online who does all the anti-missionary stuff. He can't speak here at shul.
Oh, there's lots of them. On what?
Well, just in general about, he said, when Christianity tries to show, right, tries to distort the Torah as if it's speaking about, Jesus, Messiah, all these things, right? He says, the Torah says so clearly, I'm not a man, right? Tuvia Singer is the name I was looking for.
Oh, Tovia. I'm sorry. I thought you were thinking of a Christian one or a messianic one.
No.
I was like, no, there's lots of them out there that do that.
Well, I'm talking about our team.
Give me a hint.
Yeah. The bus, what greater idolatry is there than to turn a human being into God? The roots of idolatry began that there is a supreme being. There's the God of gods, the power of powers, but he gives proxy power to the wind, to the sun, to the moon, to the ocean. And therefore I am giving honor to the God of gods when I show honor to his underlings, to his proxies, the same way that we show honor to a person when we're kind to their children. That's how we're showing honor to the parent. So idolatry started with a recognition that this is not a God. Eventually, they started to ascribe independent powers to these different things. But what is more idolatrous than saying a human being is God? Son of God, one together with God, right? And that is, of course, runs against the whole core of Judaism. The Kashet Barelcha, when it's clear to Gabori Barach, Echad Kadmon, V'masha Kanalana Min Advarim B'tchilas Sefer Zeh, Yisodo, Yisuru Kol Eila Hasvekot Mincha. Right? When we go through things that he went through earlier, then all of these doubts, meaning if there is a creator, right, it's not a team. There has to be one that was the power, right? He can vest some powers for as long as he wants into other things, but there is only this one power, and that, of course, is Hashem Echad. Okay, my friends, we'll call it over here. Where are we in Sefaria?
5519.
5519. Okay, and that's page Yud Tet. Asher Yit Yaesh, number 1. Okay, good. We'll pick up here next week, my friends. Good.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good seeing everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Good night.
Thank you.
I could be confused. I thought we come.